So, I thank you for, I didn't know I was kicking off your new series, so game is on. I am really happy to come and talk with you about motivational interviewing, and I am not going to presume anything about what you know about this, so I thought it would be best to begin by just asking what you know about motivational interviewing, or what is motivational interviewing. And I do have slides, but we don't want to be beholden to them if it's not necessarily the way you want to work. So if there are other topics or ways you want to talk about MI, I'm more than happy to be flexible. So should we do intro?
I would assume people would like to know how to do MI.
How to do MI. Okay. All right. So we're going to cover that. But we might first need to know what it is if we want to know how to do it.
Yeah, well, that's useful. Not knowing what it is never stopped us.
That's true. True, that is true. And that is the seed of innovation that leads to evidence-based practice. So let's start with the obvious. So what is motivational interviewing? What do you know about it? What comes to mind? Sort of freestyle.
It's a communication style.
Yeah, so
Between
first,
provider and patient.
yeah, and even broader, communication style, a way of having a conversation with someone else in order to engage them in some type of process of enhancing their motivation to make a change, whatever that happens to be. So it could be between provider and patient, it could be between teacher and student, it's been used in so many different realms. And Bill Miller will tell you that if he had to do it all over again, he would have called this motivational conversations. Okay? What else comes to mind? And you can talk with your mouth full. Really, that's fine.
Working with substance abusers.
So motivational interviewing has its roots in the addiction treatment field and started with problematic drinkers. And then as it showed some efficacy and people were, I guess, felt aligned with its philosophy, it took off and then it moved into more illicit drug use. And that's where it's had its original base. But as you all know, it's expanded rapidly over the last several decades and has made one of its biggest impacts within the medical field for good reason. All the things that people need some enhancement of motivation for. Okay, what else comes to mind? Motivational interviewing.
Takes into account the trans-theoretical model of change, like pre-contemplative, contemplative, in that you have to cater your interview style to what level of change the patient is ready for.
Yes, so it is consistent with and it's concordant with the trans-theoretical model of change, but it doesn't need it. So I always refer to that, they're like kissing cousins. They are theoretically consistent. They were sort of born in separate families and found one another and saw, hey, well, look, we have a lot in common. So in many ways, people speak about motivational interviewing as a way to operationalize what one does to move through the processes of change. And that's a fair summary of it. Okay, what else? What else comes to mind?
Enhances motivation.
Yeah, so enhancement of motivation. There are specific strategies, there are techniques, or the preferred term these days are components or elements of MI that serve the purpose of evoking motivation to try to draw out of people the things that are within them that might move them towards change. And so it is very much founded on this idea that within all people lies some motivation for change. Sometimes people are not as aware of their motives for change, and that's the skill of you all in trying to help them find it. And you find it for them too. Okay?
Well, that's what I was going to add, understanding an individual's reasons for change and what might also cause them to resist making changes in their life.
Yeah, so looking for all of those types of motives that might both affect their ability to move forward or make it harder for them. And in essence, what you're speaking about is their ambivalence. And motivational interviewing is really touted as an approach that skillfully handles ambivalence and presumes that most people are ambivalent, otherwise they would make the change, right? Anything else about motivational interviewing? What else?
Person-centered psychotherapy.
Yes. So it is.
Carl Rogers.
It's grounded in a humanistic approach, and so there is a lot of commonality with it, and some of the core elements of MI are fully consistent and liberally borrow from those traditions. If you take that with this more evocative component, that's what makes MI MI. So MI is not just a humanistic psychological approach. It's that at its foundation, plus a more assertive or directive way of helping people find their actualizing tendencies. All right. Anything else? What else?
I think it demands active listening. You really have to listen to their cues, if they're not saying it.
Yeah. And that fundamental point is so key in motivational interviewing. How to listen carefully to what others are intending to tell you, and how to create a space in which they are more open and willing and ready to tell you things, especially when we're working with them on behavior change issues that are either complicated or embarrassing or difficult. We need to work quickly to create that environment for a motivational conversation. All right. So these are all some of the elements of MI, and what I was going to do is just take you through some of the basic information and then give you a taste of MI, a little experiential activity maybe, and just see where we get, and maybe by the end of our hour and a half or so, talk about what you want for the next session so that we can fine-tune it to meet your needs. Fair enough? Okay. So, there you go, no conflicts. So I thought, this is an evidence-based series, so let's start with some of the evidence without spending too much time on it. Motivational interviewing is one of the most researched psychotherapeutic approaches out there. It is exponential in the amount of research that's gone on. If you just do a quick search on Medline or whatever search program, you'll see over 2,000 publications easily on motivational interviewing. People can't keep up with it. You sort of have to do deep dives at this point. The overall meta-analyses show clinically significant small to moderate effects. So it's generally a brief intervention, usually delivered within 1 to 4 sessions, usually somewhere between 10 minutes and 50 minutes, depending on your setting. And so you get sort of the equivalent effect from it. This is not about creating epiphanies and miraculous change. That's usually for Hollywood. Once in a while, it will happen in your interviews. I've witnessed some of those happening even right within this setting and listening to many sessions in our study. But most of the time, it's this incremental process of eking towards change. Usually the effects are generalizable across a variety of different targeted behaviors. In one of the more famous meta-analyses, they looked at 13 different targeted behaviors and found that there were no significant differences in the effect sizes across that. So it's not just for addictions, it's for all types of health-related behavioral changes. There's this issue of the voltage drop. So when you take any evidence-based treatment and you move it into the real-world practice, what you'll find is the effects become a little bit smaller because, as we all know, there's just a lot of stuff happening in real practice outside of clinical trials. And so nonetheless, there continue to be there's threads of evidence of MI finding its way and being helpful to patients even within less pristine trials. And most important, when performed well, it works well. So in other words, you should get some training and practice to do this well. There are a lot of people who will say, yeah, I do motivational interviewing, but that may not necessarily be consistent with the skill sets that are typically seen as what makes someone proficient in MI. So I would see this talk as a way to entice those of you who haven't learned MI to maybe get some more extensive training in it. And for those who had training, you can always get better at it. This is a nuanced skill set, and so there's always room to grow. All right, any questions on that? No? So these are the founders of the approach, Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick. This has been around since formulation of it in the 70s, and then first book in 91. There's a third edition from 2013, and there's all the research that is happening along the way. This, to me, is sort of the most intuitive way of describing MI as a way of talking with people about changes. So the person, rather than the clinician, voices the arguments for change. MI is basically helping people talk themselves into change. And so that's what I hope you'll see and experience. We talked about the person-centered counseling roots and the fact that there are a lot of strategies that can be deployed at your discretion to fit the clinical circumstances at hand. So you kind of got the definition, and if we pick apart all of what you said, what you knew about MI, well, it's collaborative, so it's working together. You sort of take the white coat off, put your expertise to the side, don't flaunt it, just have it in your back pocket and use it judiciously. Recognize that the patients themselves also have expertise in their own lives, their own experiences, and so it's this collaborative stance that is so key that the patient experiences that helps build a sense of empathy and hopefully increases the probability that they're going to talk more with you than they might have otherwise. And that you're targeting some goal. It's not this sort of ubiquitous approach where you're going to change all in their lives. It's what are we trying to motivate for change? So what are we focused on? What's the goal? And we are paying attention to the language of change. No one brought up change talk and sustain talk. These are buzzwords within MI. Change talk is anything that favors change. Sustain talk is anything the patient says that disfavors change. And so in essence, people are talking out of both sides of their mouth as an expression of their ambivalence. I have reasons to change and reasons not to change, and that's the basis of being stuck. And so it's that gradual process of trying to increase the change talk and resolving the sustain talk that is the essence of motivational interviewing. So your capacity to hear change language and sustain language is critical in navigating a session and doing it efficiently. Okay, and so these last couple of items here were brought into the more recent textbook, recent 2013, where there is a focus on the acceptance and compassion as a core component of this treatment, that ultimately we have to be able to accept people where they're at, no matter what the issues are. It doesn't mean that we agree with what people are doing, but we have to be non-judgmental in approaching folks and be working for their benefit, especially when there may be other pressures on the decision-making for the care of the patient. Ultimately, MI is about a person's autonomy and what he or she chooses as the best way forward for them. All right. Infomercial is almost done. So if you want resources, and I can make these slides available too, these are some of the sort of common textbooks that are out there. As you notice, Guilford Press is all over the place because Miller and Rolnick started a series within Guilford Press, and they review all of these books that people are putting out along the way. So if you want to do some of your own training, the most recent book is David Rosengren's book, where you can get all types of ideas about how to learn motivational interviewing. and to teach it to others, like watching commercials and coding change talk. All kinds of fun. It will change your life. And if you are struggling with your own change issue, and maybe you don't want to see someone like us, then Alan Zuckoff put out a great self-help book that helps you walk through some of these things for your own change processes. Might be useful for some of the people you see in the service. And these were some of the key meta-analyses that have come out. Molly McGill has one in Press in the Journal of Clinical and Consulting Psychology, and so consulting and clinical, I should say. And so it's an update of this meta-analysis that shows how MI works, and it's an excellent update. It has 39 mechanistic types of papers that have been done in the review of literature, and getting studies that actually show that something works as it is intended to be applied is not easy to do in behavioral treatment trials. And MI has a very strong base in that arena. All right. The Mint, we mentioned earlier. If you find that this is just all so exciting and you just want to launch, to sort of jump in with both feet, assuming that you get good enough at MI, you can apply to become a member of the Mint. You send in a sample of your practice, someone rates it, and at least documents that you are doing good enough MI to be a trainer of it. And then you go to a forum, a training of trainers forum, and you learn how to train motivational interviewing. And then you become part of this international network. You become a mentee, you get minted, it's like a, rah, rah. It is a great organization. People are generous with their resources, with their knowledge, with their ability to help develop this approach. It's really a terrific group, and they have forums both within the US and internationally. One of the nice things about motivational interviewing is it's very adaptive culturally, and so it's been applied widely around the world with very little modification of its fundamental tenets. More content issues that might affect culturally specific motives that may be more prevalent in one culture than another. But the basis of how it's done remains pretty much as is. So if you do want more, this is how we train. We watch people practice. We give them feedback on their practice. Sometimes we specifically rate the skills. And then we coach them on what they're doing. So you get a look at what you're doing well, a look of what you can do better, and some skill practice in order to develop over time. And we even have meta-analyses on training research in MI, because there's so much research. And basically, let's just say, about monthly supervision using this kind of approach gets most people to a decent level of proficiency in using motivational interviewing. All right, there you have it. So, any comments or questions or other information that some of you who are MI knowledgeable, and I know some of you in the room are, that would like to share with the group? Anything else that sticks with you about MI and information about MI?
I just would like to make the comment that there's knowing and there's knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a lot of ways, like you've mentioned the complexity and the nuance.
Yeah.
So it can really seem like you know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of time to
Yeah.
really, you kind of
Yeah.
have to feel, I think, first like you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then struggle with
Yeah.
it a little bit. And then,
Yeah. There's sort of knowing and being.
yeah.
Yeah, and in some ways, MI gets you to a place where you're thinking MI.
Yes.
You have a mindset, and we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, at first it's awkward, and then it becomes more part of your routine practice. Yeah. So expect to be a little stressed. It's good. A little performance anxiety is good.
I would just like to hear, maybe you have it later
Yeah.
on, an overview on where MI can be used in our work, because it's beyond addiction, as you
Yes.
mentioned, and like more specific. I don't know if you were planning to go over.
I wasn't going to go over like all the detail of that, but to answer your
Medication adherence.
medication adherence, HIV, all types of issues within the HIV area.
Diabetes, I don't remember.
Diabetes has a strong research base in the application of MI. Anything related to motivations around weight control, diet,
Diet,
activity level, exercise, that's a whole area. It's been used in pain management because it's hard to keep people engaged in chronic pain care and multimodal treatment. So that's another area, especially now, is quite popular with the opiate epidemic and that issue. Honestly, when you think about it, motivation is affects just about any behavior change issue, and it may be that we don't have research on it, but I think if you take the fact that it's been shown to be effective across so many different behavioral domains, you can take the leap of faith that you are standing on good practice to use MI when you feel motivation is part of the clinical dilemma and how to move people forward. We have a lot of good treatments, but they only work when people use them, take them, swallow them, whatever it is. And so MI can be a nice tool for integrating with other approaches as well, where it may not even be the MI per se that's rendering the main effect. It's the treatment that you've engaged them in, but now they're using it more because of the MI. So the combination of MI with other treatments is also pretty well supported, and certainly would apply in this setting too. Yeah.
I found it helpful for myself just to focus on ambivalence rather than motivation per se. So thinking that someone could be ambivalent about a variety of things, whether they want to do something, whether they think they can do something, whether it's worth their time to do something,
Yes.
and that this could be an approach to help someone resolve ambivalence where they feel two ways about something.
Yes.
Usually it's where I, as the provider, want to steer them in a certain direction. And I
Yes.
think my clinical judgment, it would be beneficial for you to take medication, or
Yeah.
it would be beneficial for you to go to this treatment. So
Right.
I'm trying to strategically bring the person to resolve the ambivalence and bring
Yes.
them to that side of them that wants to
Yeah.
to one side of the ambivalence coin.
Yes. So the whole issue of ambivalence in motivational interviewing has been an ambivalent matter for the field of motivational interviewing. I would say that I think the pendulum has swung back towards embracing ambivalence more so like it did when it first started, in part because the research on how MI works and Molly McGill's work now consistently in her 2 meta-analyses is showing how the composite measure of the resolution of ambivalence, if you will, as well as the decreasing sustained talk are most predictive of client outcome. It's not the change talk alone. So I would say your point is well taken. I don't want to be too orthodox in telling people on the way you should think about MI. So if you find the term ambivalence as the most helpful way of managing and addressing someone's motives for change, more power to you. If someone else struggles with that and has another way of thinking about it, as long as we're adherent to the principles of the approach, then we're good. And then all the strategies and elements and components of what you do will fall into play more naturally, rather than trying to technically do, I'm going to do a decisional balance on that person so that we can get their reasons for change going. And you might lose the spirit of the approach. So it's a style for skillfully managing ambivalence, but find your angle so that this works well for you. Okay, any other comments at this point? If not, we're going to move into experience. And so what I'd like you all to do is to close your eyes and to keep them closed until I ask you to open them. and try to stay awake. And I want you to think about a secret you have, something you've not shared with anyone. And just think about the reasons you haven't shared that secret. And now I want you to imagine if I were to say, you have to share the secret right now. Right now, you've got to share that secret. What would you think or feel? Imagine what you would be thinking and feeling. And now imagine if you chose to share your secret, not now, but at some time or place of your own choosing. What type of person would you think you would be willing to share the secret with? How would that person need to be for you to go down that path? What would that person need to be like? Okay, and now open your eyes. And we're going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about your secrets. What we're going to talk about is the experience that I asked you to imagine. So let's start with the question about if I said you have to share your secret right now, what came up? What did you experience?
No way.
No way. And we call that resistance, right? No way. We could go further with that. Anyone have even a more visceral?
Can't make me.
You can't make me. So now we're having a battle. Yeah?
Feeling anxious.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. What other uncomfortable feelings arose?
You might be embarrassed.
Yeah?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Embarrassment?
Fatigue.
Fatigue. Even thinking about it is exhausting. Yeah.
Feeling angry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fear. Yeah. Shame, guilt, all of those things. Yeah. All right. So if you were to share your secret, what would that person need to be like?
Non-judgmental.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Empathetic.
Empathetic.
Available.
Mm-hmm. What else?
A really good listener.
Yeah. So that's what you want. And that's exactly what our patients want. They want to experience us when you're asking them about their secrets. And we do ask people about their secrets. And sometimes we do it pretty quickly, like very quickly in our interviews. And so they're going to need to somehow, some way to quickly get a sense of you like the person you just described. And so motivational interviewing is very much about creating that experience quickly. And that style or way of being or interacting with patients is referred to as MI spirit. And we'll get into the various elements of that a little bit later. Okay, so if you get nothing else out of this, just remember this activity. The human encounter and the effect we can have on people within short order and how that might affect our capacity to work with them, not only efficiently, but in a really helpful way for them. Yeah. All right, so, well, MI is often spoken about as a way of dancing, conversationally dancing with others, all right? Being in sync linguistically with others, and knowing what the steps are in some way so that you guide someone towards change, right? As opposed to wrestling, trying to tell them things they don't know, or get them to be persuaded that now is the time, or confront them about how ridiculous they're being, life-threatening behavior they're engaging in, or whatever, right? Warning and threatening them. So, I thought I would show you a clip of both of these. We'll talk about them, about each of them afterwards. Okay? Let's hope this works. So, let's see what we do here. So, Kim has seen these before, but they're always fun. Let's see. Hopefully this will work. These are dental situations. So it has something parallel to a medical setting and a patient laying down and all of that.
Does the hospital block YouTube? No. It might. No?
These computers don't have something that runs in the, one of the video programs that runs in the background. Like QuickTime or something.
Well, if not, I have a clip of me doing both of these.
Well, hold it, it may be coming.
It looks like. But what I'm demonstrating is more of a typical psychotherapeutic kind of setting. So I thought this might be better.
Looks like it's.
Yeah?
There, all right.
You shouldn't have said that. Should we, let's see. It's like churning butter. And, yeah,
One to the right.
and, wait, over here? Where?
No, down here.
Oh,
Go down here.
this one? And this one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
And then we need volume. And it's all the way up.
Thinks it's making that.
Yeah, oh,
The-
Steve, the
the-
switch,
no.
the switch, the dial.
Yeah.
The volume.
We're gonna be blasted. If we can get this to work.
Oh.
Provider becomes more and more confrontational in her warnings about tobacco use and her advice to quit smoking.
Okay. Exam. Have some good news and they have some not so good news. Looks like you don't have any cavities, so that's the good news.
That's great.
However, I'm pretty concerned about something I'm noticing in your mouth. Actually, if you look up here, the roof of your mouth, I'm noticing a lot of irritation that's really consistent with tobacco use. And you had said on your form that you're not a tobacco user, so I'm just wondering what's going on.
I don't smoke cigarettes.
Okay. Well, as I said, there's a lot of irritation, in particular, like I was mentioning, up here in the roof of your mouth. It's turned really deathly white colored, and there's little red spots. And you probably didn't notice because we don't spend a lot of time looking at the roof of our mouth. But you're really damaging this tissue in your mouth, which can really cause some severe problems in terms of your oral health. It's called nicotinic stomatitis, and this is something we don't see in any patients who don't use tobacco. So maybe you're not smoking cigarettes. Are you smoking a pipe or cigars, or is there something else that
Well-
could be contributing to this? Because I don't know what else might be causing it.
Well, the only thing, I've never smoked cigarettes, ever. But when I go out with my friends, we like to go to, we like to go out to lounges and sometimes there are those nice young men that gift you different sorts of things, and we got some of those mini cigars, the Swisher Sweets. They come in peach and grape, and that's the only time that really, I've ever really used anything that's got tobacco in it.
Okay, so I think that's a pretty common misconception because they're fruit flavored. People think they're okay. Those are really bad for you. Did you know that?
Really bad, but they're just cute little girly cigars.
Right, they're still cigars and they're still tobacco, and so they still cause lung cancer, oral cancer, emphysema, all those same kinds of things that you would see with cigarettes.
Well, I only
really
use them
important.
just to relax. I mean, it's not like it's something that I would smoke 20 or 30 cigarettes a day. I mean, I only do it when we go out.
Well, at least you're not doing that, so that's good. But it's still causing a lot of problems, and as I said, I can see the evidence in the roof of your mouth. You're causing some serious damage, and this needs to stop. Have you thought about quitting?
Well, I didn't really know I'd started. I didn't really think that it was anything more than just like social drinking. It's something that I do in a social setting when me and my friends go out to the bars.
So you're gonna quit then?
Oh.
What do you mean maybe? I just told you how bad it is for you. It's messing up your mouth. You're putting yourself at risk for all these other diseases. It's really important.
Well, it's something that I'll have to think about.
What's there to think about? You said it's not that's something you do all that often. There's all these negative side effects. There's all these risks that you're putting yourself.
Well, it's just something that I do to relax, and I don't do it that often, and so I probably could cut back.
Okay, well that's a good start, but cutting back isn't going to do it. If you actually quit the smoking, you can reverse all the damage you've done in your mouth, and you can stop yourself from being at risk for these other diseases. But as long as you're continuing to use these cigars, you're really putting yourself in a lot of danger.
Well, I don't believe that they're cigars, and what I do believe is that it's a choice, and it's my right, and it's something that I choose to do. And so I will think about cutting back, but I'm not at a point where I'm ready to do that, and I'm not really sure that I even believe that what you're telling me is real.
You're choosing to really damage your mouth, and actually it can cause problems with your teeth too. I don't know if you've noticed your teeth might be getting yellower than they were before. That's another side effect. There are a lot of really negative things that go along with any tobacco use, whether it's cigarettes, cigars, dip, chew, snuff, snooze, hookah, any of it. This is a really important decision that you're making, and you said it's your choice, but you're really choosing to make yourself sick and potentially die.
Something that I'll think about.
Well, I appreciate you thinking about it. I hope you'll think about it really hard. You know, this is something that I'm going to continue to ask you about because it's something that really needs to change.
Has he?
How do we get out of this?
Escape.
Escape?
Yeah, just hit escape.
Ah, okay. So, well, I'll just leave it up here because then I'll get the next one. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, we'll do that in a second. So, what did you observe?
Bullying.
Hmm?
Bullying.
Bullying?
A lot of telling.
Yep.
Condescending.
This.
She knew better. Yeah. Yeah. Nonverbals.
And then she wrote her arm like she wanted to hit her.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to hit her. I'm not gonna hit her. Yeah.
What she's saying is, what you're doing is bad, and you're bad for doing it.
Yeah.
It's just that messaging.
Yeah.
Power differential.
Yep.
Confrontation.
Yeah. Yeah. And even when there was an opportunity, despite all of that, where she says she's willing to cut back, she just sort of rolls right over. That's not good enough. There's only one acceptable goal here. Yeah.
She evoked the patient being like kind of defensive and like probably the woman's going to change her dentist. I'm going to keep at
She's
you.
gonna smoke on her way out of the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to keep at you until
So,
you do something.
so where does the patient's motivation lie?
In the toilet.
In the sense of, is it her motivation, from what you're telling me, is affected by the way this provider talked with her? Yeah. So what does that imply then? Is it the patient's motivation? Is it a trait? Or is it a state? Yeah. It's a state. And motivational interviewing, especially in the first edition, spoke a lot about the interpersonal nature of motivation. That it's, in some ways, it's something that exists between people because it's so easily influenced by how people are interacting with one another. And so in MI, we speak about our responsibility, professional responsibility, to have the skill set for enhancing motivation. If we're very good at getting people unmotivated, we should be equally talented at helping them become more motivated. So it's a shared responsibility between patients and providers in enhancing motivation for change. And it used to be in the, when this whole movement started, the expectation in the addictions treatment field was come back when you're motivated. You get discharged from the treatment program because you're using or drinking, which is the symptom that you came there to get treated for. And so this is a way of sort of shifting that in some ways and helping people see that we're part of that process for worse, or hopefully now you'll see for better. Any other comments on that? Sorry for those who don't like dental scenes. We need to do a little bit of, relaxation here. So, all right, now let's look at it again.
Watch what happens this time when the provider cues into what the parent is saying, empathizes with her situation, and attempts to work with the parent to find a solution that fits her needs.
So I wrote a prescription for antibiotics for Aiden. I did want to talk to you though. I'm a little bit concerned looking through his chart at how many ear infections he's had recently, and I know.
See, you can use it for ear infection. Yeah, here we go, dentist. Right, did I hopefully got that? Do you want to?
Okay, David.
No, what is going on?
Yeah. It's weird.
Let's try this again. All right, so why don't we do this? Let me get out of
I see
here.
it.
And then we're going to go to the next slide. Oops. No. Go to this one and see if that links us to the right one. Speed up browsing. Okay.
Watch what happens this time
There we go.
when the provider asks the patient for her view of the situation and follows up by talking about what's important to the patient and why she might want to make a change.
Okay, hard facts over. So the good news is no cavities.
Oh, great.
Yes, always happy to hear that. I do have some concerns though because I'm seeing some irritation in your mouth and the palate. That's called nicotinic stomatitis.
Oh, that sounds bad.
Yeah, it is. It's some damage to the roof of your mouth that happens from tobacco smoking. And so I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about how tobacco fits in your life right now.
Tobacco? No, I don't smoke cigarettes. I've never smoked cigarettes. I do go out with my friends. We go out to bars and, we'll have a few drinks and smoke some of those little cigarillo type things. I mean, I don't even think of them as cigars, and they're certainly not cigarettes. And I'll have one or two of those in an evening with my friends, but certainly not 20 or 30 of them a day like you would with cigarettes. And that's the only thing that could possibly have anything to do with tobacco.
So you've made a decision in your life not to smoke cigarettes. It's something you didn't want to do. It sounds like you're kind of concerned about the health effects of cigarettes. But you have been smoking the little cigarillos at least one or two every time you go out.
That's just like a social thing. That's something that my friends and I do. It's not a habit or something that I have to have. And, talking about one or two when we go out for an evening. Not packs of them.
Yeah, so you're not like those chain smokers. You're not smoking packs and packs a day.
No.
The amount you smoke is so minuscule you can't even imagine that it would cause any harm, and yet here it is damaging the roof of your mouth.
Well, you have a point there. Now that you mention it, I have started having one or two at work, when we have breaks, since I have a couple of friends at work that smoke, and so every time we have a break, we all go out to the a great place outside, and so I go with them, and I have one of these Swisher Sweets. I like the peach flavor of that. They're so cute. But that's really only pretty recently.
So smoking has kind of become a big part of your social life now. When you go out, you're smoking, and even during breaks at work, you're smoking.
Well, yeah. Now that you say it like that, it's true. I am smoking on a daily basis.
So aside from that social aspect, what are the things you like about it?
Well, it's relaxing, and it's just nice to be with people. And when I like to go to Las Vegas, and so when we go to Vegas, it's really fun to go to the cigar bars. It's kind of sophisticated and fun, and so it's mostly a social thing. I wouldn't say I was a chain smoker.
Okay. How about the other side? Have you noticed any not so good things about the smoking?
Well, I was going to ask you about whitening my teeth, because I've noticed that they have more stings on them than a few years ago. And so I imagine that has something to do with the smoking.
Yeah, so we're noticing some pretty negative effects in terms of your oral health with the smoking. Are there any other things that you're concerned about?
Well, there's the expense, what with the economy and all, I have to be careful about my money. And so there is the extra expense of, because I'm buying more of them than I used to. So the money aspect is also a concern.
So there's your oral health, there's the financial aspect, and then earlier you brought up some concerns about smoking cigarettes and how that can be harmful for you.
Yeah.
Were you aware of the fact that smoking these little cigarillos, the Swisher Sweets, can have some of the same negative health effects?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, I thought of it more as a fun thing to do with my friends, certainly not a smoking habit or anything that would be harmful.
So it's kind of surprising to you that something you've been doing, and you've been doing more and more of it, is actually pretty bad for you.
Oh, yes. I checked the box on your form when you asked if I used tobacco. I checked no, because I never thought of myself as a smoker.
What do you kind of make of that now that you realize that you're actually a tobacco user and that you might actually be causing some pretty serious health effects?
I'm really concerned. I mean, I don't want to develop cancer, lung cancer, or any of the awful things that happen from smoking. And, really, until this conversation, I never really thought of myself as a smoker at all. So I'm very concerned.
Well, the good news is, in terms of the nicotinic stomatitis, at the point in which you stop smoking, you can actually reverse all the negative effects that occurred. And you might also know that you can stop the progression of any other diseases that had started just by quitting smoking.
Really?
Yeah, is that something you'd be interested in?
Oh, I would. I really would. Because, like I said, I'm a brand new smoker. I didn't know I was a smoker until I came to see you.
Well, if you think about it on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is really don't think you could do it at all, and 10 is really confident that you could quit if you tried, where do you think you fall?
Well, I think I'd probably be in 7 or 8. I'm pretty confident that I could stop doing this.
Okay. What made you choose 7 or 8 as opposed to a 5?
Because it's not a part of my daily life. I don't have to have a smoke when I get up in the morning. I don't smoke 20 or 30 of them a day, so it's not that much exposure, and I'm pretty confident that I could stop.
So it sounds like, just to kind of summarize, you've noticed some negative effects of the smoking. You have some concerns about health effects that could occur. There's the financial aspect, and yet you feel pretty confident that you could quit if you tried. So where do you think we should go from here?
I'd really like some more information about quitting. I mean, I've heard there's some new medications, there's some new things that can be done to help people make quitting more comfortable, and I really want to quit.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to talk to you more about that and give you some tips and advice and give you some suggestions about where you can get some support with quitting.
And that'd be wonderful.
I really appreciate you talking to me about this today.
Thank you.
Instead of jumping in to confront the patient about her tobacco use,
All right, so let's talk about this segment. What did you notice? What was different? What did you see that you thought was helpful?
It's much more a conversation instead of talking with.
Mm-hmm. And she ended up talking more.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
She engaged.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you can't motivate someone for change if they're disengaged. Yeah.
She has to put on the snapping mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could tell she was listening.
Yeah. Yeah, because with the snapping, she wasn't trying to make her point. Right? She was trying to hear. Yeah. Okay, what else? What else did she do?
It seemed more about the facts than her judgment. She seemed less judgmental.
Yeah.
It was more stating facts and letting it sit.
Yeah. She was drawing out the patient's experience and what the nature of the pros and cons were for her. And it led to her come to a different conclusion. And this, it's in the end, she says, I didn't realize I was a smoker. It was very different than the last clip.
And I think an important point of that aspect is that you acknowledge that there's some purpose that
Yeah.
that behavior may be serving
Yes.
before we go into maybe
Yeah.
arguing that they shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because I think if you fail to account for that part,
Yeah.
the patient may not feel like you're really hearing their whole experience.
There's a reason they're doing what they're doing. There are reasons. And then this gets into the, I guess, the skill of MI is how much do you attend to that versus attend to the side of change. And this is one of the great debates in MI is what is, do you simply pull for the change talk? And if there is no counter argument to that, just keep going? Or do you need to attend to the other side? And my general clinical rule of thumb is if someone's trying to tell me that there are reasons for them to keep doing the behavior, then that's a signal to me to explore and understand that. Okay? Any other observations about this? How did she move motivationally from beginning to the end of this, whatever, 15-minute session?
Open-ended question.
Yeah.
Okay?
She followed doors,
Mhm.
open-ended, then affirmation, there's ratings, and then summary.
Yeah, so you saw there was like a logical progression.
Yeah.
She was dancing. You saw her moving to somewhere. Yeah, she had direction in the session. Yeah. So that's what good MI looks like. Now, you don't have to look like her. You don't have to sound like Bill Miller or others. You're going to have your own style, but it's the principles at play. So what I wanted to do is just go through and tag some of the core principles of motivational interviewing, and then we'll get into practicing some of the basic skills.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
This little clip, because one of the things that really bothered me is the way she couched the consequences, and it was in sort of a blameworthy way. You didn't realize that you're killing yourself.
Yeah.
She didn't say killing yourself, but
Yeah.
you didn't realize what damage
What
you
you're
were
doing, yeah.
And it just felt
Yeah.
very non-MI-ish
Yeah.
to me.
So I think what you raise is a good point, which is how do you know how the patient's experiencing your reflections or your questions? And so in this case, she seemed to respond okay to it. And it may have been experienced as, yeah, I didn't realize that, versus someone else might have potentially felt blamed. And also, depending on the experiences that patients have prior to seeing you, could very much color the way they're experiencing you, of course. So the key is at being attentive to the feedback you're getting from your patients. So if someone were to experience that as a little bit accusatory,
Yeah.
then you would expect them to start to talk a little less or start arguing for not changing or disengaging with you, or and that can be either withdrawing or could be being combative and argumentative. So rather than saying, oh, it's another unmotivated smoker, my God, how many times have they been here? You know, with a family history like this and where they're at medically, I can't believe it. Or you get fascinated and go, wow, here I'm trying to be empathic and reflect back, and I got that. That's kind of interesting. So you use it as a guide to understand the patient's experience in the moment.
There's a whole different facial expression from the patient too.
Yeah.
Like you said, like kind of dancing or reading them and
Yeah.
meeting them, and
Yeah.
you could tell her face. You know.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the second time the person was aware of that.
Yeah. And did you notice the patience? The patience, as in being patient with the patient, right? And I like to say that sometimes when you go slower, you get further. And so MI, even though it is a language-sensitive sort of therapeutic approach, it can be efficiently done and have sort of these incremental enhancements in motivation in relatively brief sessions. All right, any other comments on this? So, let me go over some of these types of key principles. The spirit of MI. Motivational interviewing, as I said, is more of a way of being, a style of interacting with folks. And we often speak about the spirit. This is sort of what is sort of evolving or revolving or being within you, so that it's collaborative, which we've discussed, that you are meeting people where they're at, that's your expectation going into meeting any patient without judgment of whatever their conditions or behaviors related to the conditions are. That's not always so easy, depending on what people have done that got them into the hospital, right? This idea that we examine what is in their best interest and then we act in accord with that. In medical settings, this can become a little tricky sometimes. So you can imagine in some circumstances like organ donation, is it appropriate to use motivational interviewing to enhance someone's motivation, let's say to donate a kidney? What do you think? Is it let's say, ethical to use motivational interviewing to enhance the motivation of someone to, let's say, donate an organ like a kidney? And then if you think not, why not? I mean, someone could benefit from that kidney. Yeah, yeah. It's like when we don't know what the sort of best position is for the person, then we don't use motivational interviewing. We take more of a neutral stance. We call it equipoise. So you're helping a person sort through their ambivalence without trying to guide it toward this direction or that. With addictions, it's a little ethically easier to justify that we are trying to stack the deck to move them here rather than there. When you get into circumstances where that's much murkier, then you should have sort of the hair on the back of your neck come up a little bit and go, wait a second. Now, there have been people who have used MI for the purpose of organ donation, but only after they more neutrally explored which way the person in the end decided he or she thought was in the best interest of both them as the individual as well as the person they were donating to. And then enhancing that motivation is on much sounder footing. So you can imagine termination of pregnancy would be another one that many people would feel uncomfortable using MI with, some people perhaps not, and so on. So just keep that in mind. And then finally, this key element of evocation, this notion that you are listening for and expecting that within all people are motives for change, and so you're listening for it and you're sort of primed to draw it out. That's the whole stance that you're taking as you approach someone. Hi, I'm Steve Martino. That's what's swirling in me, right? And we rate people on MI spirit. We actually rate them, and spirit in some studies have actually been related to the involvement of of patients within sessions and how much they're engaged with you, as well as some outcome. So that's key. And another core principle in motivational interviewing is this idea of you're combining both relational and technical components. So the relational components are all the parts of MI that allow you to listen more carefully to people, to understand their perspective, to engage them with you, right? So a lot of the use of reflective listening and open questions, really building the rapport, that's all part of the relational element, the MI spirit. And then the technical part is the use of the components of MI to accentuate, develop, enhance motives for change. So it's this combination of this style of working with people with these specific components to move forward motivationally. It's the marriage of those two that make MI. And there was a paper that came out in 2009. If you read one paper about MI, it's called Toward a Theory of Motivational Interviewing by Bill Miller and Miller and Rose is the co-authors. Rose, I'm blanking on his first name right now. And this has been laid out, and those meta-analyses by Molly McGill test what they laid out in 2009 and confirm many components of it. So you are always blending these two skill sets. And how does MI work? Well, there's you. And if you engage in MI consistent behaviors, then what you should see or hear is this increasing change talk and the decreasing sustained talk. Arguments for change increase, arguments against change decrease. This resolution of ambivalence is occurring, and that is what, at least in part, is driving the outcome in MI. There are other potential mediators at play too, but this is the one sort of mechanism that's gotten a lot of research attention and validation in the literature. So that's the aim. And so how do you do this? What are the steps? So in the 2013 version of MI, this was how it was reformulated. Not to suggest complete linear thinking in this, but that there is a bit of a logic to how one conducts a session in MI. So the first step is obviously engaging people in a conversation so that they feel connected and willing to work with you on discussing issues. Then, as you well know, your patients don't have one issue. They have multiple things going on. So what are we going to motivate for change? Sometimes you're going to have to focus on a target. And how to do that is a skill set in MI. So you're negotiating some type of contract, if you will. Especially when you're using it in a brief setting, more so like you would do here. And then evoking would be, once you have your target, what are their motives for changing it? And then if they get to a point where the ambivalence is resolved, there's more change talk than sustained talk, we make a plan for change. That's the logic of motivational interviewing. Now, as you can see, it could all be happening at once. So you become facile at maybe while you're engaging, already listening for motives for change. If they become unfocused, you bring them back to the target behavior. You start to make a plan for change because they said they're going to quit or do something differently, and then in the midst of thinking through the plan, they get ambivalent again. You go back down here. So it is more fluid than it seems, but this is a simple way of trying to parse apart the complexities of MI. Right? How many are familiar with this? Yeah, yeah. I hope some that have been in my trainings are, right? So, all right. So, so what I thought we could do is just practice some of the skills, and I want to put the caveat out there that usually we have 2 to 3 day trainings and really dig into these. So this is, again, just a taste of MI, and a lot of this is presuming that some of this is familiar to many of you, of course. So engage involves the use of your fundamental skills of MI, and they have been often referred to as the ORs: open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. The emphasis is on reflections. In the old days, we used to get all hung up about open versus closed questions and, count them fastidiously. Now it's really not as essential because as research has accumulated, these distinctions haven't really held up. I would say, clinically speaking, especially in medical settings, but even in traditional mental health settings, we might have a few folks that ask just too many closed-ended questions, to get at that information, diagnostic formulation, planning, right? We're figuring it out for them, and that could lead to too many closed questions. So we still attend to it, but we don't make a big deal out of it. So we're going to go through some of these and then see where that gets us. So, reflections is a statement that really is expressing your best guess about what a patient means. And sometimes we think we know what people mean, but we may find out later in the conversation that what we thought they meant wasn't actually what they meant. All right. And then that can lead us to either become frustrated or to have to spend more time. And so reflective listening is really core in understanding a person's perspective and then highlighting the things that might motivate the individual for change. So let's go through a couple of examples to show you the multiple possible meanings of what a person says. So, person says, "What do you want to do about your drinking?" So what does this particular client in this case mean? When she says, "I can't go on like this anymore." I can't go on like this anymore. What could she mean? There's no right answer, by the way. This is freebie.
She sees negative consequences to habits at this time.
So she may see negative consequences to her drinking. What else?
She might be ready for change, saying, "I can't go on like this anymore. I need..."
It could be a sort of disguised commitment, burgeoning commitment. Yeah? Yeah?
It could be that in her mind she needs a source of income to keep drinking.
There are things that are getting away from what she really wants us to keep drinking. Yeah, it could be.
I heard you asked me about drinking. She could be actually saying, like, I'm suicidal. Even though you asked about one thing.
Yeah, it could be that she's trying to indicate that she's depressed, and that's partly what's driving her drinking too. It could be suicidality. It could be multiple things. All right, let's try another one. Tell me about your diet. I should do more about it. What do you think?
I wonder if she feels ashamed about the behavior.
Could be.
Sense that someone thinks she should be doing more than she is.
Yeah, yeah, it could be. What else?
So should imply is like maybe that she's not ready to make the change, but she knows that she can do that, basically.
So she may feel that she knows, but she doesn't feel able.
Right.
Right? I should do this. What else could should imply?
She knows and she doesn't care.
Yeah.
Oh, so that could be another way. Yeah.
She thinks that the physician is passing judgment.
Yeah. That could also be. Yeah. Yeah. So lots of possible meanings. One more, just to drive the point home. How are things going with the medication? What about it? What difference does it make?
Maybe she doesn't see the medication having any effect.
It may be that it's not helpful to her. What else?
Or not important.
Maybe it's not important. Maybe there's something else that she would like to talk about. Or,
She's not taking it.
yeah. Yeah. Or maybe she's given up. Yeah. What difference does it make might be what difference does anything make? So there are lots of possible meanings to what people say, and the key is to be curious about it and not to immediately assume that what you think is what they said, to reflect back what you think to see how the person responds to that. That's the basis of reflective listening, and to the extent that what you say you heard matches what the person intended to tell you, that is accurate empathy. And this is what we strive for in motivational interviewing, certainly for engaging people in a conversation. The more able you are to do that, the quicker people engage, and usually the more they talk, and then the more we have opportunities for enhancing motivation for change. So you can use reflections also to strategically keep reflecting the change talk. So if someone says, yeah, well, I'm so depressed, and drinking makes me feel better, but in the end, I only feel worse. Now, what do you reflect? You could say, drinking makes you feel better. Right? Or you could say, in the end, drinking only makes you feel worse. So depending on what you say, could lead you down a whole different kind of path. So in motivational interviewing, which one might we be likely to say?
Second.
The second one, right? Because that is really leveraging the reasons for change, and you're using your basic strategies of MI in a strategic manner to develop motivational enhancement. Now, if you say that and then the patient says, yeah, but I'm just so depressed, sometimes that's the only thing I can do, that might be a signal. Oh, okay, so you'd like to stop drinking, it's hard to do. Now, that was a complex reflection because it didn't say I'm stopping, but I heard it maybe. So you take liberties. You want to hear what's not said and give voice to it. Again, the skill of reflective listening. And so we have this simple versus complex reflection as a key skill set within motivational interviewing for reflective listening. Sometimes we just repeat or rephrase what they say without adding any meaning to it, and that can be perfectly appropriate. Sometimes people don't fully absorb what they've said, or you want to use your reflection like a highlighter. I really want to feel like I can spend more time with my grandchildren. Your grandchildren. Simple. Maybe that's all that needed to be said, and then let them just open the floodgates of their relationship with their grandchildren and how much it means to them, and say, what's getting in the way of that? And then it's probably whatever you're working with them on. Or if you were to address X, Y, or Z, how might that affect your ability to spend time with your grandchildren? What would you do? That kind of thing. So simple reflections bring attention to something that you feel, for whatever reasons, is important to highlight in that moment conversationally. And then the complex reflections are those that where you hear something said, implied but not stated explicitly, and you reflect that back. So obviously this is not just the realm of motivational interviewing, this is just the realm of good conversation and good counseling. It's leveraged a lot in motivational interviewing and critical. You can't do MI well if you can't listen well to folks. So, and the reflection of feeling is a particular, often sort of type of complex reflection because people don't always verbalize their emotional experiences, but it's evident to us, and sometimes labeling that is helpful, clearly, and can serve the basis of motivational enhancement too. So, I have this silly activity. My apologies to Kim, who's seen this before, heard this before, or anyone else who's heard this before. But just to give you a flair for complex and simple reflection. So I'm going to say a nursery rhyme, and then I'm going to ask you to offer me a simple reflection. The first time I'd like just a repeating reflection. Okay? Ready? Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes, commitment language, I love it. All right, so Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. Simple reflection, repeating one, please.
Mary has a white lamb
whose fleece was white as snow.
Yeah, so you went for a more truncated, simple reflection, and you chose to say the whole thing. Now, why would you say that back to me? Mary had a little lamb. What does that highlight?
The important facts of the statement as opposed to maybe the fillers.
Maybe there's a relationship. Mary had a lamb. That's interesting, right? It's interesting. You got to be interested. Okay? So, and it could be that Mary will start telling you about her relationship with her lamb. Yeah, I got a lamb, let me tell you. And you don't know which way it's going to go. It could be loving and it could be hateful. We don't know. So simple reflections, it's just like a toe in the water and an encouragement, and you show you're listening. That in and of itself could be powerful. You're listening. Now, if you went for the whole thing, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. Now you've given me broader range in which I might respond to that. Fine. You're listening. All right. Let's go for paraphrase. Change the words, but don't add any new meaning to what you reflect. So Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, her lamb was sure to go.
Mary's lamb went everywhere that she went.
Okay? So now you've given me the opportunity, you've added a little more element to this. Mary's going to maybe start talking about how this lamb is going everywhere with her and what that might mean. It's not just that she has a lamb, but the lamb is going everywhere with her. We don't know what that means to her. Right? So again, simple reflection, change the words. You don't want to become too rote and just repeating everything somebody says. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the points of that kind of reflection. So now let's go to complex reflection. So you're going to pick up on something that I have implied, but I haven't said it. Okay? Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, her lamb was sure to go.
Mary has a lamb that's very attached to her.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could be that that's right on target, and then I'll say, yeah, I just love my lamb, and we've been together for so long, and I can't imagine my life without her. Yeah. Or if that was just a little too much for me, I might backtrack a little bit, because maybe the attachment was too strong, and I like my lamb. I mean, I don't know if I'm attached, but so it doesn't matter. Whatever the response is, it's helpful because it gives you a sense of what she means. Okay, and let's go further with that. Complex reflection on what I just reflected. Other options. Mary's really attached. What else could it be?
Mary's lamb is also very attached to her.
Yes. You both are very fond of each other. Yep. You spend a lot of time together and have developed a close relationship. All kinds of possibilities. All right, smell the coffee beans? Next. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, that lamb was sure to go. Okay, reflection.
That lamb was always underfoot for Mary.
Yes, now that's the master of understatement, which is a high skill, because when you understate emotions, usually then people will match it and tell you why it's even more than that. So that's a skill of reflecting sort of emotional valence there. Okay, what else? What else might you reflect?
Might need more space or boundaries.
Yeah, you're feeling a little, what, bound up a little bit, cornered by your lamb. Yeah. You'd like to get rid of this lamb. The lamb is stalking you. There may be lamb chops for dinner. Yeah, all kinds of things. So the key of all of this is listen carefully to what people say. So another little tip is when you can not only reflect well, but can hear what people are saying well and accurately reflect that back, your sessions are also more efficient. So I've always said to do brief MI means to have to do even better MI if you really want to leverage it all in a sort of concentrated way. Okay. So if you thought you had it, let's put it to the test. So I'm going to read this to you, and then we're going to go one at a time, and you tell me whether it's simple or complex. So a 36-year-old man tells you, "My neighbor really makes me mad. He's always over here bothering us or borrowing things that he never returns. Sometimes he calls us late at night after we've gone to bed, and I really feel like telling him to get lost." You say, "He makes you pretty mad." Is that simple or complex? Okay. He's not very considerate. He's really a pest. Complex. So it's implied, but he never said he's a pest, right? You want to tell him to get lost. Yeah. This guy really gets under your skin. You're really trying to hold in your temper. You're angry he never returns things he borrows. Simple. You wish he would just stay away.
Complex.
So you see that sometimes where the line is between simple and complex isn't so clear. Don't worry about it. That's for nerdy integrity raters who are debating these things sometimes viciously. Wild fights have broken out in my rating trainings about people who just disagreed what simple and complex was. Okay. You're trying to think of ways to get him to stop bothering you. You wish he weren't your neighbor. Yeah. So many things can be said. It's all up to you to decide what you feel is most meaningful in the moment and how you're sort of navigating, guiding someone towards change. And you can see how some of these really are lending sort of positive behavior or positive motivations. Let's see, you're really trying to hold in your temper. Or what else? You're trying to think of ways to get him to stop bothering you. These are almost like positive reframes, which is a way of affirming an individual. This is a very affirming kind of statement. Right? So simple and complex. Yeah? So I thought maybe we'll give you a little bit of practice and just have you pair up, and one of you will be the speaker, and you get to choose one of 3 scenarios of your own life that you're willing to discuss. A health-related behavior that you struggle with, that you're willing to discuss. A patient situation you find challenging, or something you just simply feel 2 ways about. Okay? And then the other person will be the interviewer or the listener, and I'd like you to just use reflections and open questions to understand the gist of the matter, and then find an opportunity to affirm. So affirmations we didn't discuss in any detail, but affirmations are catching someone doing something right and saying it to them. So if you hear in a person's discussion a strength or a quality or characteristic that could support change, say so. If you hear that there's been an effort made to approach change, reflect that. Or if you see within what's being discussed, even if it's potentially framed as a disfavoring change, but you see a way to reframe it as a positive change opportunity, do so. So reflect, use open questions, find an opportunity to affirm, and then summarize. So this should go a good, 5 minutes, and try to keep the conversation going until I give you sort of the 1-minute warning to begin to wind down and to formulate your summary. Right? And then we'll see where we're at with that, and maybe we'll switch it around. Okay? Everyone have a partner? Let's make sure we...
Okay.
And if there's odd person out, then I can do 2, 2, 2. 2, 2, 2, 2. I'll come over here. Excuse me?
Do you want to be the listener, or do you want to be the speaker?
Excuse me? Here, we can do it this way, and I'll just... Good. Steve. Yes, good. So what would you like to interview or speak first?
I should practice interview.
Okay.
Even though I could easily be the speaker on a health event.
Yeah. So can I. I think I'll choose that one. So I am soon to be 56, and I am noticing that maintenance of my health, in particular my physical well-being, is becoming more challenging, and I am not graciously accepting the aging process. And so I've done a lot of things. I ran for years. I try to eat healthy. I did yoga for a total of 5 years in the last several years. And I've ultimately stopped that. And now I'm even considering going vegetarian and starting Pilates. So I guess I'm struggling to accept getting older. And I'm fighting it.
It sounds like you've been very healthy most of your life, vibrant, exercising, doing things like yoga, being very active, and now you're starting to sense that the aging process seems to be affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about the ways that you've kind of felt that. Have you felt that in any...
So I feel stiffer. I feel more easily tired. I feel that I can't concentrate as long as I used to. And those are the main things. And given the work I do, it's just been hard to figure out if that's just the way it is, or if there's more I could do to stay on top of my game. And so that's really, I want to feel vital, and I have interests, and I like doing physical things and all of that. And so, and I think also what generated this is I had Achilles tendonitis, an insertional type, and it took a year to get over. And that really also caused me pause, like, oh, injuries don't quite rebound like they used to. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like over the years you've had some issues with injury experiences where you felt like you weren't quite as resilient as you were before.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you in my own experience that I've had the same issue where, I play in a men's hockey league, and I used to be, the fastest guy out there.
Yeah.
And now all the young guys in their 20s, I can't keep up anymore.
Yeah.
So I can relate exactly
Yeah.
to what you're saying. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you're looking perhaps for some way to kind of feel better or slow down that process that you think will get you kind of feeling the way you used to feel.
Yeah, and I think I have to balance that also with being a little more accepting of, I don't want my life to become so vain that it's all about just maintaining my health and weight and whatever, and I just want to, I don't want to become that guy. And I never want to be a gym rat. I just don't like the gym, but I do it. But I don't want to do it more. So I'm looking for some other things that would maybe blend strength with flexibility, and that's why I was thinking about Pilates.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it sounds like I can certainly relate to that because I myself have a lot of difficulty just going to the gym for its own sake.
Yeah.
It sounds like there has to be some kind of a little bit more of a goal or something that you're kind of feeling like there's more of an investment in the activity itself.
And targeted to what I need at this point in my life. Running I liked because it got me, I like trail running. It got me outside. It was really, in many ways, it was relaxing, even though it was painful in some strange way. And it was efficient. It was very efficient. There's nothing like running for weight control and just general health until you get injured. So that's what I'm looking for now. Is I don't run anymore because I don't want to ever have a year recovery from that kind of thing again. So that's why I was thinking maybe Pilates would give me a little bit of the yoga-esque thing, but with a little more strengthening and core activity and all. Yeah.
It sounds like you think that Pilates is going to be kind of good for you with your goals, with improving your flexibility and increasing your strength, but also making it kind of interesting and not feeling like it's
something new
and novel.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful, I mean, I look around sometimes and I go, all right, I'm doing all right, it's not so bad, but I have active adult children, and I'm not used to not being able to keep up with them, and they're just getting crazier and crazier in the things they do, and it's like that's where I have to start saying, you go ahead. Go ahead, I'm not going any higher. I'm not doing that.
It sounds like the motivation is there to be able to kind of keep up and maintain your level where you've been and even improve.
Yes.
Just to keep pace with your kids as they challenge you and kind of feel that motivation.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Good. Let me just tell her. All right. If you haven't summarized, work towards a summary, and then I would say switch roles so that each person gets the other experience. Okay? So you can do a summary.
Yeah, sure. So it sounds like, what I'm hearing is that you've been a fit, healthy guy your whole life. You've been very active. You've done some running. You've done some other activities. And more recently, of late, it sounds like you're starting to feel a little more like age is catching up with you. and you're looking for ways to basically, you know, kind of slow down that process, feel healthier, improve your flexibility and your strength, and you're really looking for other activities that can help you do that. And it sounds like you've identified that Pilates is something that could be really good for you kind of in that area. Really kind of helping you improve your own health and get you kind of to the next level there.
And I think the final thing I'll say is that my wife has been doing Pilates, and she's been encouraging me to try it because she thinks I'll like it. And I think it'd be nice to do something with her that we haven't done before, like something like that. And also cut the cost down, which I think is her motive. So,
that sounds really great.
Good. Okay, good. Well done, and then we'll talk about it at the end. So what would you like to talk about?
Well, I have this issue where I was an athlete my whole life. I played hockey my whole life, and I was always very fit. And then I played through college, and when my college career ended, I kind of had trouble just exercising kind of for its own sake. I was always kind of a fit guy, but I exercised with kind of a goal in mind. Like I was training for a sport, I was doing something, and now I find I just struggle to exercise regularly. You know, my wife kind of gets on my case because she's worried about my health, and because she sees I'm more sedentary than I was. I've lost, definitely lost some muscle mass. I feel like I'm starting to get kind of
the love handles
in the midsection, and it's like on one hand, I'm pretty ambivalent because I want to be fit and strong, but on the other hand, I just don't really enjoy. I don't find any inherent enjoyment in running or biking just by itself. I guess there's some kind of circumstance where maybe I'm okay with it, but I can't seem to do it consistently. Make it part of my lifestyle, even though I kind of think I should.
So it's a goal that you have for yourself to become more active. It's more the question of how to go about that in a way that fits well with your interests and your lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of like finding the right activities, because I can do it if I'm playing a sport or doing something that's interactive, like competitive with other people. I enjoy that and I can do that, but it's harder to do kind of as I'm getting older. I have less time, busy at work, just to be able to kind of carve that out. But I find just going to the gym, it's like I gotta drive all the way up to Hamden, and with traffic from New Haven, it takes like a half hour to get there. So I can kind of do it sometimes. I notice I'll go in like a week stretch, and then I'll get kind of like thrown off at something. I'll stay late at work, and I won't go, and I just get out of the habit. Even though I kind of I know I'm supposed to do it, and my wife wants me to, but it's been tough.
Well, so you mentioned that you'd like to feel a little more fit. You're concerned that the trends right now are going in the wrong direction, and so it's not so bad now, but you don't like what your future holds. And being fit is part of your identity. You've been an athlete for years. So, what thoughts have you given to finding a better balance so that it's not too intensive on the gym side? What have you considered or done?
Yeah, well, I play hockey once a week in a men's league. I've thought about skating more as an additional exercise, and I've tried to do it. I've been going back, and I've tried to kind of vary my workout routine. So like one day maybe I'll do some swimming, and then the other day I'll do something different. So I've thought about that, and maybe even getting involved in other sport activities, like basketball or something else. But I don't know. It's just kind of tough, like with work, and it just seems like it's always a struggle, and I don't know. I just don't seem to enjoy it enough. That's maybe the problem.
And you've been able to get by up to now.
Sort of, but I'm starting to feel the aging process. Because like I said, when I go out and play hockey now, I used to be very fast on the ice. Now I'm kind of like I can't keep up with the younger guys.
And you'd like to.
Well, yeah, I want to be what I was.
Mhm.
And I know that's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm worried that that's never going to come back.
And that you sound like you don't have the time to devote to what would be required to get back to that, like you did when you were in an organized sport at a high level and training, that your life doesn't lend itself to that now.
I think that's another good point, because like, you know, I used to be able to train for 2 hours a day. Now, if I can get an hour in,
Yeah.
I'm lucky. But yeah, it's kind of also like, when I do things, I want to do it sort of 100%.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, I feel like if I can't do it all the way, I don't want to do it at all.
Okay. So that's another barrier for you is, you're all in. You're an all in kind of guy.
Yeah, kind of. My wife is like, why can't you just be moderate about it? Because she never played any sports.
Yeah.
So she can just like go and run for a half hour, and she's fine with that. But for me, it's like, I want to either like run the Ironman and win, or I'm just like.
So that's an interesting idea you have, setting some type of goal that would drive your focus in a way. I don't know what your thoughts are about that, like something like Ironman or marathon or half marathon or whatever the things happen to be.
I've actually thought about it, trying to maybe do like a triathlon or something like that.
Yeah.
I actually learned how to swim just recently. I hadn't learned it.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're quite adaptive.
Yeah, I would say I like to learn new things.
Yeah.
But that was something I always wanted to do, because I never learned as a kid. I actually 2 years ago I started taking lessons once a week, and it got me swimming. I'm still not, not that good or whatever. But
hold on one second. If you take a moment to wrap up, because we're at 2, and then we'll just quickly talk about this and make our plan for next time. Yeah. So okay, so your identity is in part an athlete. It's been a big part of your life. You would like to feel fit and strong, and your life has evolved where you've accomplished other things, and how to fit all of this together in a way that works for you is your current challenge. And you've tried to start various things, but nothing is holding your commitment in a way that is working well enough for you. And so you've been really trying to figure this out, like what's going to be the best way forward. You don't want to lose your edge, but you might feel like your edge is also holding you back. Yeah. What was that?
I got a long way to go.
Yeah, well, and to your credit, you're adaptive, that you're willing to try new things, that you don't know what the solution is going to be, but you're not satisfied with the status quo. What your wife is pointing out to you is something you know. And it's just how to go forward with this in a way that's true to yourself.
Yeah, I think I gotta just figure out a way to incorporate it into my lifestyle. So it's just kind of
part of the routine.
Part of the routine.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks.
Steve? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which is true.
Let's, excuse me. Let's take a moment and just talk about this. So you used your oars. How did it go? Let's talk about just you when you were interviewing. How was it? What did you notice? What worked well? What did you find more difficult?
I found that when we were being the listeners, you mean?
When you were being the listener.
Yeah. I just found like the reflections kind of kept the conversation going.
Yeah.
Kept it flowing instead of becoming stagnant.
Yeah. What else?
Also helped me feel like I didn't have to solve the problem, but rather help someone think about it.
You were collaborating. High spirit in the back corner. Any other observations as interviewers?
It was a little bit challenging to not get sidetracked into other somewhat newly
So you kept the focus, but that took some work. Okay?
For me, I had some trouble, like, I guess, maybe not getting myself bogged down into kind of talking about the same things, or if I felt like I was being repetitive, I was just
Yeah.
trying to make like a reflection.
Yeah, how to evolve the conversation. You have direction, keep it moving. Good, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we talked about how to be kind of genuine in a conversation like that.
Yeah.
Which I think at first when you have pointers, it's helpful to kind of start the conversation going.
Yeah.
But then toward the end, as like we're kind of fizzling toward the end of the conversation, it's hard to keep the genuineness.
Yeah. Okay. And how many of you found your partner's story interesting? Right. How many of you learned something you didn't know about someone
Was mine
else?
boring?
No. Yeah. We are also interesting. Yeah. So that's another thing. It's just you're allowing people to express themselves, and you find out about others. Right? Now, what about when you were being listened to? You were speaking. How was that experience?
It's good.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
What was good?
She was like bringing out some positive things that about my struggle that I wasn't thinking about. You know,
Yeah.
outcomes.
Okay.
Focus on.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I felt heard in terms of how I wanted to be heard instead of just she was going through a checkbox list of things she needed to cover.
Okay.
And I felt validated that I was raising a tough issue and that it's hard sometimes to know what to do.
I found that I'm not alone. The exact same kind of issue. Different generation, but same issue. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so that's your taste of MI for the part one. Part two is a couple of weeks or something like that. So what I thought we would do is move more towards the rest of the process, focusing and evoking and all of that. But if there's something specific you want me to do, tell me, and I will try to accommodate it. And bring scenarios with you maybe next time too. That would be fine. You know, this is what I ran into, and we can work on it as a team. We can do role plays with one of us taking the lead and the rest of you telling us what we should or shouldn't say to be consistent with MI. So please, let's make it real.
I just thought too, it did get harder. Someone else said that as you were going along. The beginning was easier, and then I wasn't sure if I was like suggesting to her or being open enough, or was I leading her or following her? Or, you know what I mean? It just got harder.
Yeah.
To come up with things and to say, am I allowing her to be the one to?
Well, in part, this was just a listening activity in some ways. We weren't doing the evoking formally, so that's what gives you direction and would make the conversation, I think, a little easier to continue. You know, you may have understood in part what she was telling you. It's like, okay, like, where do we go with this? That might be part of it.
Well, I think we went a little further.
Yeah, okay.
That's why it was hard.
Yeah. All right, we're
Great,
over time.
thanks.
See you in a
Thank
few
you so
weeks.